All right, good morning, everybody. We have a special treat for you today. We have the legendary Joel Salatin with us. Joel is described as a Christian libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist, lunatic farmer. He's certainly probably the most well-known advocate for good kind of farming. And anyway, it's a real pleasure to have you here today, Joel. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's just my delight and privilege to be with you. You're heroes for me.
Oh,
Well, both Matt and I own farms here in Uruguay. I mean, I'm involved in a very big operation in Argentina, but here on Uruguay, we each have a few hundred acres, and I'm having a hard time making a profit on it, even though it's good land. So there's a secret to it. How do you want to sum up what you do in the area of farming?
Well, I would say, Doug, you may not know that my dad was an accountant. He was a tax accountant. He wasn't a CPA, but he was a he was a bookkeeper, accountant, set up books for people, and had a degree in business management. Actually, we had a farm in Venezuela, South America, he was there for 12 years. And then we got caught in the junta of Pérez Jiménez in 1959 and lost everything. It got all taken over, and we eventually had to flee the country for our lives and lost everything and started over here in Virginia. But he always had this thing that that commodity agriculture requires scale and low margins and homogeneity. And so as a small farmer, we couldn't compete because we could never make enough pounds, bushels, widgets, whatever, to compete in the commodity game, because we couldn't spread our overheads across enough items. So early on, he appreciated the value of direct marketing, of actually having a branded, whether you're direct marketing or more marketing into a more upscale situation, but where the market rewards differentiation, and we start wearing the other hats. The kind of the four hats of the food system are producer, processor, marketer, and distributor. Those are kind of the four hats, and so the more dollars we can load into those middleman hats. I mean, how many times have you heard, well, the middleman makes all the money, right? Well, if that's where it is, then I want to be the middleman, So I want to be the processor, the marketer, the distributor, and that wearing all those other hats takes me out of that the highest risk component of agriculture, which is the production end. That's what's subject to weather, price, pestilence, and disease. The four horsemen of the apocalypse. And that's what all the farmers stand around and complain about all day, is weather, price, pestilence, and disease. And so if we, as a farmer, if we can capture some of those dollars in processing, marketing, and distribution, those don't get eaten by grasshoppers. The phone lines don't get fungus on them. The tires don't break when the wind comes through. And so we begin insulating the farm from those vagaries of production agriculture, which are weather, price, pestilence, and disease. So that's kind of been our our platform, and it has worked marvelously.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, because even though commodity prices, I'm talking wheat, corn, and soybeans, are up a lot in the last year, fertilizer prices have tripled, which is more than just up a lot. And I guess with farmers having to buy $500,000 tractors that they can't fix themselves anymore and so forth, I mean, what's going to happen to all these great monoculture farms where thousands and thousands of acres are planted in the same identical corn or soybean or what have you? I mean, it seems unsustainable, to use a overly popular word to me.
Right. You're exactly right. Well, uh, yeah, they are unsustainable. They certainly are not regenerative, and they have a lot of externalized problems like a dead zone the size of Rhode Island in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, that's a direct result of this kind of agriculture. So yeah, so if we can go on from the beginning of the discussion, say, so how do we insulate ourselves from the fragility of a system that disrespects, if you will, the basic tenets of nature, which is diversity, complex relationships, these complex interconnections between the animals and the plants and the different kind of plants. I mean, we're told that the native prairie, whether it's the pampas of Argentina or the prairie of the U.S., that these native prairies had as many as 200 different species of plants per acre. I mean, that was common, and all those plants occupy a different soil zone, a different air zone. They use different things. They concentrate different minerals and enzymes and different things. So what we've done at our farm is we have looked across that natural template, if you will, and say, well, how does nature work? I mean, it should give us all pause to realize that 500 years ago, North America produced more nutrition than it does today. Now, it wasn't eaten by people. I mean, certainly there were people here, but there were 2 million wolves that ate 20 pounds of meat a day. There were 200 million beavers who ate more vegetables, because they're herbivores. They ate more vegetables than all the people in North America today. So Audubon sat under a tree in 1820 and recorded that he couldn't see the sun for 3 days for the flock of passenger pigeons that flew over and blocked out the sun for 3 days. I mean, this was production at such a massive scale, we can scarcely, imagine it today. And so we look at this, say, well, how does nature work? And we realize that nature, that the foundation of nature is solar driven. So the sun, through photosynthesis, grows plants, and those plants then, bring biomass that then can either be eaten by an animal or and decompose that way, or it can decompose just leaves rot on the soil surface. It just decomposed by microorganisms, and so the driver of soil development is carbon, is biomass production, and it's in situ. It's not driven by 10 chemical fertilizer brought in from some laboratory in the Middle East. And so this is an amazing, liberating thing. It's very liberating to think, wow, you mean just with the sun we can actually grow soil here? Yes. And so one of the first big investments we made was a chipper, a wood chipper. So we could go in the woods, take down, crooked and diseased and junk trees and weed the woods. In North America, all of our forests are too crowded. They're like green beans that haven't been thinned, or carrots and radishes that haven't been thinned. We believe that we need more forest and fewer trees. And if all the trees being currently burned in these massive fires, if they were actually chipped for composting and biomass regeneration, not only would we have incredible fertility in our soils, but we wouldn't have a fire danger. The insurance companies could charge a lot less premiums for fire, and we would employ thousands of people viscerally massaging our ecological womb into the abundance that it wants to give us.
I love that you say it that way. I wonder if one of the other parts of it, I know a big part of what you do that differentiate, not just wearing all four hats in the food production cycle, like the marketer and distributor, et cetera, but also that you don't use all of these inputs that are common in the industrial agriculture we have today. And I wonder with all of those prices going up, all those inputs going up so much, and food prices on store shelves going up so much, I wonder if that makes your products more competitive today than they were 2 years ago.
Wow, you just hit bingo. This has been an amazing thing that we have never seen in our lifetime. So a month ago, a lady was in the farm store looking at the our meat counter, and she kind of makes this little exclamation, "Wow!" And I went over. I said, what do you see?" She says, "Well, you got sirloin steak for $9." She said, "At Costco, it's $16 a pound." And
Holy
I said,
crap.
"Whoa, are you serious?" Because I don't go to Costco. So are you serious? And anyway, we got to sleuthing on it, and here, Matt, you've hit the nail on the head here. What we've got is, for the first time in my lifetime, is that we have a new economic recognition of the fragility of this very of the industrial chemical food system.
Mm.
And so, like I said, on our farm, we pretty much run it on solar, solar power through plants, leaves, and composting. So we don't buy ammonium nitrate, we don't buy phosphorus, we don't buy potassium. There are microbes in the soil when the soil is healthy, that actually create those minerals in situ. I mean, there are free microbes that pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere. You don't need, petroleum-based Faber-Bosch, whatever. We don't need that kind of thing if we have a very healthy soil. And so what's happened, I'll tell you, back in what was it, it's been about 10 years ago, when fuel prices really spiked real high, remember? And we had all these peak oil things, and we're running out of oil. We're not, we're all going to go into the dark ages. And so at the time, I saw this report that the average farmer spends 50% of their expenses is on energy. 50%. And I saw that report, and I said, well, that just doesn't sound right. So I did an audit of our own spending. And remember, I put in both of our delivery trucks. We deliver to the city. They're almost on the road every day. So I put all that in, and our fuel bill was only 5% of our costs. And suddenly it dawned on me, wow, diesel could go to $12 a gallon. Now, I don't like I'm not bucking for high fuel prices, okay? But it was extremely encouraging and affirming to realize that if fuel went through the roof, we would be the last guy standing. And there's a little bit of confirmation in knowing you'd be the last guy standing, because you hope by the time you're the last guy standing, somebody smarter than you figured out, how to not be the last guy standing. And so that was a very affirming thing. So what we're seeing right now is a new vulnerability in the supply chain dependent, global dependent, single product dependent, chemical dependent. We're seeing those chickens are coming home to roost. And what's amazing, what's really cool, is that for the first time in my lifetime, the great big outfits are having trouble competing with those of us who are smaller. Now, we're not a backyard operation. We're a $4 million, farm business with 25 people. So, we're not a backyard operation, but we're way smaller than Cargill, Tyson, IBP, and these big outfits. And so what's happened is that suddenly, with COVID and litigation and employees suing their employers because, well, they didn't give me enough time off, I was sick, and they, blah, blah, blah. Every HR department and CEO wakes up every morning wondering, oh no, who's going to sue me today because, I didn't give them the right protective equipment or quarantine procedure or whatever. Who's going to call OSHA, and report me for, not taking care. And in our small business, we don't have anything. We have a loyal, savvy team dedicated to the cause. I don't wake up in the morning and wonder, oh no, who's gonna turn on me? But if you're a CEO of 1,000 employee place, you wake up every morning with that. So what we have are these great big aircraft carrier businesses that have always been efficient, so unquote, And we've got all these shoals and rocks in disturbing waters. And those of us running little speedboats, our little speedboats, we can navigate all these disturbances, and we're actually finding a price equivalency, if not price,
Beating them on price.
Yeah, better pricing in the marketplace for the first time in my lifetime. There's just a lot of things here jockeying in the space, and it's just an amazing time to be in the space.
Well, it does seem like if there's, go ahead, Doug.
No, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, it seems like if there's one thing that would finally, and I think people have been waking up to this whole regenerative ag stuff you've been preaching about for decades, and showing people how to do, and being a great mentor and model for people. But I think that people, if there's one thing that really wake people up about it, it's food scarcity and high price food, and yet a huge economic opportunity in small regenerative ag. Like, if that makes sense economically, you have to assume lots of capital will flood that way, and that'd be great for everybody.
Yes, it would. And so the other thing that's happened, kind of while all this has been happening, we've also had an unprecedented development in efficiency logistics of distribution. So 10 years ago, there was no way, for example, that I could compete with a supermarket to get a product to somebody in New York City, for example. Or there was no way I could compete with that. I'm 250 miles away from New York City, and the bricks and mortar interface was that was the low cost model. But what's happened now is that bricks and mortar interface has gone up in cost. The cost of a cashier, the cost of making sure the back bathroom alley light is is lighted, that the ice and snow are scraped off the front walkway so nobody injures themselves. So the cost of maintaining a personal retail bricks and mortar interface has escalated, while the cost of distribution, UPS, FedEx, all these outfits has dropped precipitously. I read that UPS has software now that when the driver gets in his truck in the morning, he plugs all the addresses in the software, and the software routes him so that he never has to make a right-hand turn. And that alone saved UPS something like 30% of their fuel bill. And so suddenly, for the first time in my lifetime, we actually have a competitive price point between doorstep delivery versus the supermarket. And so here, right when the food chain, the great big industrial food chain, is straining under exactly global supply chain issues, litigation, COVID mandates, as it's straining under that, we have the door has been kicked wide open for people like us to ship doorstep nationwide to any apartment, any place in the city. And so farmers like me who live on a dirt road, who don't live, near a population center, can actually access at a competitive price the retail bricks and mortar outfit and the big industrial complex. So it's an inversion. It's almost an inversion of the things that I've had to defend all my life. I've defended it, or you're higher priced, or you're an elitist, or how can we do? And I've had to defend all this. Suddenly now, I'm playing offense. I'm playing offense, and it's really it's fun to have the ball on offense once in a while.
Yeah, Joel, I have to say, when I think of elitist, I don't think of you. That's just doesn't come to mind.
But your biggest stumbling block, I suspect, would not be the market or the economics of this thing, but there must be a lot of regulatory hurdles that you have to jump over because you're not part of big farms or this type of thing. Why do they make your life very miserable? They don't want you to slay and pack your own chickens
Right,
and beef and
right.
pork? How does it work?
Yeah, well, it's a it's a labyrinth, to be sure. And you are exactly right, Doug. When I do media interviews, which I do a lot of them, and they ask me what keeps you up at night, my 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 standard answer is that I missed some license compliance. I didn't dot a form. I didn't cross a T. I didn't pay a $5, whatever thing. And suddenly I'm going to have a bureaucracy swarming over me. That is absolutely the biggest hurdle. And it is the biggest impediment for farms like us being able to compete with the big industrial systems because Doug, the all of the food safety, I'll just make a pretty blanket statement here. All of the food safety regulations, which were started by sincere-minded people who thought the government could, protect them and give them security. All of those food safety regulations are size prejudicial. They're easier to comply with if you're big than if you're small. And so this is the single biggest impediment to market price competitiveness is the prejudicial nature of these regulations. For example, if in order to sell, let's say charcuterie, okay, I want to do charcuterie. Well, if in order to sell it, I need a $5,000 sophisticated thermometer that the regulators say, in order to sell it, in order for us to put a USDA stamp on your charcuterie, here's the infrastructure you have to have, and one of them is say a $5,000 thermometer. Well, that's nothing if you're making tractor trailer loads of it down at at Cargill. But if I'm making it in 5-gallon buckets for my neighborhood and community, that prices me out of the market. And so the food safety regulations by and large are not regulations of empirical standard. You can have so much salmonella, you can have so many parts per million of this or that or the other. They are standards of infrastructure and paperwork. And so what's interesting is that the United Kingdom, up in the last time I was in Britain, which was pre-COVID, I was doing a conference, and one of the other speakers was from the British food inspection service, and his whole presentation was how in the UK they are using artificial intelligence and infrared photography to photograph carcasses, because see, all of the like manure and contaminants all emit a different frequency in the infrared spectrum. So you can actually take infrared photographs, and like Campylobacter will show up, as a spot, or Listeria, right? And so what they're doing is just taking the inspectors out of the plant and putting in high definition AI photography with AI intelligence back at a central place, that if a certain whatever light pattern shows up, if a certain color pattern shows up, then it flags it, and that carcass gets pulled, and they look at it a little more. And that's empirical. We have that ability. I talked to one of our inspectors about that, and I said, can we have an R2D2, an R2D2 that we swab and put the sample in and make this a scientific empirical test? He said, absolutely, that would work. And then he stopped a minute. And he said, oh, but then I'd be out of a job. And so what we've got is this huge, the entire food safety inspection service is a glorified jobs program that has no actual merit in keeping food safe. It's just a big jobs program and a bunch of paperwork. And so I wrote a book several years ago, Everything I Want to Do is Illegal. And it documents these fights and battles we've had with the regulators over the years to try to do what we do. At one point, they tried to shut us down, and we actually submitted our chickens to a lab, a culture test for bacteria, and our chicken with no chlorine at all, and the supermarket birds had 40 chlorine baths on them. Ours with no chlorine averaged 136 colony forming units per milliliter to the second permutation. And I've already told you more than I understand, but that's how they measure it. And the supermarket birds with the USDA label on it and 40 chlorine baths measured 3,600 CFU per milliliter. We were 25 times cleaner, not 25%, 25 times cleaner than what was in the store. And yet they were trying to tell us that because we were open to the air and, and birds could fly through and it wasn't, sanitized with, chlorine and antimicrobials, that, that our chicken was inherently, unsafe. And so we know how to, how to run circles actually around the standards that the government sets, but the standards don't recognize empirical, qualitative, objective testing. It's all about, do you have this piece of furniture? Do you have this equipment? And do you have this, this protocol? I'll just finish with one story. I had a friend has a small slaughterhouse out in Minneapolis, and so one of the things you have to do is monitor the temperature in your refrigerator where the carcasses are hanging. And like every 3 hours, somebody has to go and actually physically check the temperature. And then you got a little check sheet hanging on the door. You check, the 2 o'clock check, the 5 o'clock check, the 8 o'clock check, right? Okay. Well, they hired this new person, or there was some glitch, and whoever was supposed to check the 2 o'clock failed to check the box. The inspector saw it, and he immediately taped and condemned $200,000 worth of beef hanging in the locker, because that thing. Now, when they came back at the next check, the temperature was exactly right. So the temperature, it wasn't reasonable to think that, suddenly something happened, here in this 3 hour check, that the temperature actually went up and then came back down. I mean, that's not reasonable. And so that's the kind of shenanigans that go on, in small facilities with these inspectors. And so I'm a big believer that at the end of the day, the entire inspection system it provides an unnecessary hurdle to small outfits, and it provides cover to big outfits when there's a problem. What does the CEO say? As soon as he has his press conference, he walks up to the microphone and say, "We have complied with all USDA requirements." And so suddenly they are not liable now for anything because all their boxes are checked. So it gives cover to sloppiness and negligence, and it impedes access to the people who really have the innovative answers, at a smaller scale. So you have two things. So I'm a big believer. I think you would agree with this. At the end of the day, if we didn't have any inspection whatsoever, that then every business would be liable and responsible for its own protocols, its own techniques. And I call this Uberizing. This is Uberizing the food system. This is where we need to go. Who would have guessed 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that people would get in cars with no special inspection standards, with people that they don't even know, and say, take me to the Hilton, right? Who would have guessed that? But without any government control, no unions, no nothing, no inspect. Well, the reason it worked is because Uber has real-time closed loop monitoring. If I don't like the driver, I tell him I don't like the driver. He doesn't get any more business. If the driver doesn't like me because I'm a bad customer, then I get blackballed and nobody will pick me up. So this circle of Uberization is fabulous, and actually brings back the historic village understanding, when the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker were embedded at village scale within the village. Everybody knew who the artisans were and who the charlatans were. The scuttlebutt, word got around. And so you'd better be on your toes. to maintain business. And so the internet and the Uberization possibility has democratized, has re-villagized the capacity to create real-time monitoring of the integrity of the butcher, baker, and candlestick maker, obviously at a much larger scale than the village. But that's the cool part of the internet, that it has democratized that monitoring loop.
That's a totally accurate analysis of what's going on, Joel. I mean, that's perfect. But I'm wondering, notwithstanding that, do you find that the powers that be are reacting, and they're getting worse, even while a lot of things, like you pointed out, are actually getting better? I mean, what's the trend from that point of view?
Yeah, well, the truth is that it is getting worse. I mean, as you know, crumbling civilizations are, as they become more vapid, they become more impotent. All right, crumbling civilizations. What they tend to do is grasp at more laws, more regulations, because that's all they can do. They can't manufacture anything. They can't actually, do anything. And so what the politicians grasp for to maintain power is just let's heap some more laws down. And so in the big picture, yes, it is getting worse. And but what's happening is, as it gets worse, there is a grassroots, a very vibrant grassroots movement now of circumvention. And so a fellow and I, a fellow libertarian and I, 3 years ago started the Rogue Food Conference in America. It's the RFC Rogue Food Conference. We're having our 4th or 5th one here in Florida next month, actually. And our mantra is circumvention, not compliance. There comes a time, Doug, as you know, when tyranny becomes so strangling that it actually becomes more efficacious to figure out a way to circumvent it than to try to comply. And that's exactly where we are. So we have now a flourishing guerrilla marketing undercurrent now of very smart people that are figuring out ways to do food transfer. And I'm not saying selling, I'm saying food transfer without being in commerce. In commerce is the legal term that the government uses. Look, I can milk a cow. I can give the milk to a neighbor. That's no problem. I can butcher a cow in the back. I can butcher a pig, make sausage, and give it to a neighbor. They can feed it to their kids. It's all good. But as soon as you have it in commerce, as soon as money changes hands, that suddenly becomes a hazardous substance. Now, what's interesting is that in the drug war, and I know this is one of your favorite one of your favorite topics, in the drug war, not only can you not sell methamphetamine, but you can't even make it and you can't use it yourself. If I have a meth lab and I say, look, I'm having a meth lab and I'm just doing this to myself, I want to slowly destroy myself, and it's none of your business, let me destroy myself. You can't even do that. Okay. So in the drug war, the prohibition is on both buyer and seller. But in food, the prohibition is only on selling. It's not on, I'm sorry. Yeah, the prohibition is only on selling. It's not on buying. So if I'm a mom and I want raw milk, or I want, backyard charcuterie, or I want a, sausage from my neighbor hog killing, all right, or quiche, quiche from the neighbor's, chicken eggs, all right. If I want to buy that, it's perfectly legal for me to buy it, to feed it to my children, and and use it. The prohibition is only on selling. So if it really were a hazardous substance, if a backyard chicken really were hazardous, if a homemade quiche really were hazardous, if homemade bologna were actually hazardous, wouldn't you think the prohibition would not be just on buying, but also on selling you shouldn't even be able to make it and consume it yourself, you know. But that's the great hypocrisy of the food hazardous, the hazardous food, whatever philosophy relative to the hazardous drug philosophy. And that's the great hypocrisy. And so we now have PMAs. That's short for personal membership associations, PMAs. So these are modeled after a country club, a golf agreement. Those are non-public things, and nobody can just walk in there and play golf at a membership country club. And so we've got smart attorneys who are taking that template and applying it to the food, so that you are now a member, and the money that transfers is not a sale, it's an interest or a dividend on your investment. And so it's wonderful stuff. We have a lady in North Carolina that started a food church. You join the church and you get this stuff. We've got a guy in Louisville, Kentucky. He actually has a storefront, a members only storefront. The state keeps trying to close him down, and they can't, because what people do is they invest, and then when they go and they take product out, the customers, it's simply a debit on their investment. And so they invest in like $200 blocks, and they just keep a running tab, and when the investment runs out, you invest another $200. And so there are multiple ways. There's a guy in Portland, Oregon. And what he does is, when he sells like a lamb, for example, he has an agreement with the buyer that the buyer gets the meat and he gets the guts. And so he butchers right there on his front porch, literally. The state keeps trying to close him down, but there's no law that says I can't butcher my own lamb. And so he butchers his own lamb. Well, to get the guts, he's got to butcher it, and the customer takes the meat and he gets the guts. And so there's all sorts of really clever things going on, because the burdensome regulation has become so burdensome that it's now people are willing to step up and take a libertarian risk, and say, hey, let's contrive a different procedure. It's very exciting.
This conference is next month, you said? It's the Rogue Food Conference, just in case people want to find out more about it. Where do they find?
They can just Google Rogue Food Conference. It'll pop right up.
All right. Well, we certainly encourage that sort of behavior. So
right.
Hope we can help sell some tickets for it.
Good. Well, I hope so. Yeah.
So what do you think? Go ahead, Doug.
No, it's just, here I am. I've got 1,000 very productive acres with a mile of riverfront and a big pond and fields and forests and all this type of thing. And because of my lack of hands-on knowledge, I have lots of theoretical knowledge about this type of thing, but not hands-on knowledge.
Right.
I can't turn a profit on this, even though I have good counsel from the local vet and the local cowboys and all this type of thing. With everything else I'm doing, I can't put it all together. I can't make it happen. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do, Joel? What do you think the solution would be? Well, forget about this down here in Uruguay. What if somebody has 5 acres or 10 acres? I don't know what the minimum that you might want to work with is. Well, what do you do to change it and make it more like what you're doing? Make it productive, profitable.
Yeah. Right. Well, so I actually do a lot of consulting now. All of a sudden, it has really just blossomed here after COVID. I used to travel the world speaking at conferences, and now it seems like all I'm doing is going out and helping all these newbies, these urban refugees that are buying what I call their country club agrarian bunker. I mean, generally they think the wheels are going to fall. In fact, Doug, Matt, you would appreciate that in the last 4 or 5 months, I've been contacted by 4 billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires, who are concerned the wheels are going to fall off, and they say, look, I need a safe haven. I need a place. And that's just, I mean, that's never happened to me, you know. And
Wow.
and so here we are. So what do I do? So there's a very specific pathway here. Um, First of all, you need a mission. You need a vision, a one sentence mission. Say, what do we want to do with this place? What happens typically, Doug, on a place like yours is you almost have. I don't want to say too many counselors, because I like counselors, but you've got all these ideas, you know, coming into your head, and it's hard to. You've got paralysis of choice, you know, and so. Um, these couple guys, they want to do this with that 500 acres. And these couple guys, they want to do this with that, you know, and there's not one, you know, one overall comprehensive landscape design plan. And so
That's right.
the first thing that I do, and a lot of times these interests are competing. Obviously, if one guy wants more grass for the cows, he's got to compete with the guy that wants to plant, you know, the crop guy that likes crops and wants to plant.
That's exactly the what I had to confront last. Yes, that's right. Go ahead.
Okay. So at some point, so what I do on these places, I sit down with the team, and I try to come to an agreement on like a one sentence vision or mission. What do we want this place to be? What do we want this niche of, you know, of God's creation to be? Once you get that kind of clear destination, here's the problem. If you don't know where you're going, you can go anywhere. It doesn't matter. But if you know where you're going, then you have efficiency of, you know, you know where to turn on and where to turn off. And as you know, lots of times it defines a business as much to what it says no to as what it says yes to. And so you've got to know what to say no to, because there's lots of options out there. And so that gets everybody pointed in the same direction. And the people who don't want to go on that journey, they leave. You know, you don't have to fire them. They leave because I don't like where this is going. So they leave. So it becomes a self-vetting kind of situation. And then the people who are on it, and it attracts people who want to go in that direction. And so then you start honing down your personnel. Another thing that we do on our farm is that we don't pay any hourly wages. Everything is either salary or performance based. So rather than paying somebody, you know, $20 an hour to take care of a herd of cows, we pay them a per diem to caretake that herd of cows. That means they've got to be efficient, and they've got to think, and it's all in their ball game. Like we produce, I don't know, a couple hundred, 300 dozen eggs a day, and most of those eggs are done by independent contractors who have come up through our system as apprentices. They're now running these farms that we rent. So we now lease about 15 properties in the area. We're running, you know, over 2,000 acres. And they're on these other places, and we don't pay them by the hour. We pay them so much a dozen per saleable egg. So if they get $1 a dozen per saleable egg, suddenly guess what? If they don't keep the fox out of the chickens, they get no eggs, they get no paycheck. If the eggs get dirty and they have to spend more time washing them to get them clean so we can sell them, that's their time, not my time. And so everything is performance based or salary with clear project expectations. And that keeps us out of the employer tension of, did that guy screw up enough to fire or talk to? You know, we have all this angst when we've got these people working for us. You know, is he really paying for himself? Is he spending too much time at the water cooler? Is he incompetent? Does he not follow instructions? You know, we've got all this. How bad does it have to be before I have the conversation? You know, and we've done this, you know, now for a long time, decades. And the neat thing is, so we have a memorandum of understanding with these with our people, memorandum of understanding. So using time and motion studies, we create a value to every job that's done. What's the value of starting a group of chicks? What's the value of caretaking a group of pigs? What's the value of gutting a chicken? And you actually have an opportunity spread sheet where people, I'm going to do one batch of turkeys, 5,000 broilers. I'll do 2 egg mobiles and keep a herd of cows. And so our personnel, our staff actually builds their compensation package off of this opportunity sheet. So we're not sitting here giving jobs. We're actually just creating a germination tray that if you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, entrepreneurial, and savvy, you'll step up and you'll make a way to make a go of it from the opportunity sheet. What's interesting is that over the years we've had some young people that want to stay and work with us, be on our team. So we make out they create this MOU. At the end of the year, they say, "Oh my goodness, this doesn't work. I mean, I can't make any money. This is just ridiculous." Okay, so they leave. The next year, another one takes that same MOU, same memorandum of understanding, same everything, same compensation package. At the end of the year, they say, "My goodness, I didn't know you could make so much money farming. This is the greatest thing that ever happened," and they're excited. What's the difference? The difference is that one had get up and go and one didn't. And so they sort themselves out. We don't have to do the sorting. They sort themselves out. These kinds of arrangements attract confident, confident, savvy people, and the people who just want to put in time and come to work and turn off the brain. Those kind of people, they can't make it work because it's all based on time and motion benchmarks with a compensation plan that's based on the time and motion study. So that way we can have numerous enterprises going on that are almost, not completely, but almost autonomous, because all of our team members are sharing risk. I don't want to work with somebody where I take all the risk and they don't. If a fox kills all the chickens, I don't want to be the only one that takes the heat, losing the chickens. I want them to take some heat. And so we want shared risk takers. And so you make your mission statement, you get this is where we're going to go. You create performance-based compensation for the team so that you are not liable for, whatever.
Well, the risk and reward is shared.
Yeah, or the risk of reward and the risk of failure is shared. And once you get that, then from there, then you develop your ecological things. How are we going to regenerate soil? It's going to be carbon based. Well, how do we get carbon? Then you start talking about infrastructure, design, those additional elements as you move on to a market.
You're making an excellent case for a farmer, if he's a good farmer, being an actual Renaissance man. You have to know a lot about a lot of different things, and you have to be able to not only think things, but do things. So, no, I mean, farming is a very underrated occupation. And I wonder whether the farmers that have these, giant monocultures in the Midwest and so forth, whether the whole process is becoming degraded as it's become industrialized, really. I mean, your formula for a farm is totally different from the way big farming is evolving. I mean, it's contradictory, actually.
It's totally contradictory. In fact, not very often, but once in a while, somebody makes a mistake, and I end up speaking at a more conventional farm conference. and every time I do, and I show my pictures of chickens with cows and pigs making compost, so we don't have to use tools. Pigs aerate and turn to compost. When people see this, their first, the conventional mind, they all think, "Oh no, he must be full of disease with all these different kinds of animals and plants and all this diversity. It must be full of disease." And in fact, the opposite is true. They're living in this very sterile, mechanistic worldview, and I'm living in an extremely biological, spontaneous, microbially active worldview. And when you look at natural, I mean, look at the Serengeti in Africa. The Serengeti in Africa, it's not just one animal. I mean, why do we want to watch the Serengeti in Africa? Because it's tons of different animals, lots of different kinds of trees, different plants, different kinds of things. And so this diversity pattern is critical. So on our farm, we have, over the years, we've built ponds. We do irrigation. We can, reduce flooding. We can grow grass in a drought. We've corrugated off, tree zones. So there's lots of wildlife corridors to feed the carnivorous predators, so they don't attack the chickens. I mean, the whole thing is about trying to build this very functional ecosystem. And so Doug, what we really need to do, you just need to pay me a bunch of money to come down and show you how to do this. You see,
We should do that.
No, it really, you're right. It is simple, but it's extremely elegant. And for some reason, we humans, I think you'll agree with this, we humans like to complicate things. I mean, talk to the average Harvard economist, I mean, they just complicate things. And really the elegance is in the simplicity of it.
Yeah. Joel, I wonder though, because all the people that have, I grew up, I'm an Iowa boy. So I grew up around, this sort of monoculture, there are lots of corn, lots of soybeans. And, no one wanted anything to do with it. Everyone wanted to get as far away from it as possible. You just hear the farmers complain about it all the time. Their kids would leave and go to Chicago or anywhere but there. And, and then lots of farmers that I knew of committed suicide even because it's so difficult with it's so something so deeply unsatisfying about that industrial ag for the practitioner as well. I think, something that's so unappealing about it. Where Doug says what you're describing when you're a farmer it's the farm of a Renaissance man. I mean, you're so much more connected with it. There's so much more, it's dynamic and interesting. And I wonder if half the problem with farming and people's satisfaction with their life even relates to that in some way, that their jobs are basically mechanistic.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. In fact, I think the recent statistic, 80% of Americans hate their jobs. I mean, that's profound. And of course, in farming in the next 15 years, half of all America's agriculture equity is going to change hands because the average farmer is now 60 years old. And so this has never happened in peacetime in any civilization. No civilization has ever had that large and dramatic a transfer of agrarian equity. So that's land, equipment, buildings. No civilization has ever had that large a transfer of agrarian equity in that short a period in history. The only time it's happened is in conquest. The Huns came in and take over Rome or whatever, but it was in conquest. And I'm not saying we're getting ready to go into conquest. We may, but what I am suggesting is that we are in a very unprecedented time of agrarian equity transfer. And so the question is, and Doug asked, what is going to happen to these? I don't know. I mean, Bill Gates certainly can't buy it all. He's bought, 250,000 acres, which, is a lot of land, but there's a lot of land out there. And so we're seeing just, massive opportunities unprecedented, actually, opportunities in farmland, in rural areas to actually rent and lease. One of my mentors, next to my dad, my greatest mentor was Alan Nation. He was founder of the Stockman Grass Farmer. When he passed away, they asked me to be the editor. So we were very, very close. I'm the editor now of the magazine. And one of the things that he said was that America is moving toward a more European system where land ownership is a defensive financial position. And land management is as a financial offensive position. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. We are not wealthy people. We don't have Swiss bank accounts. We have not been, investors. What we have learned is how to make money on farmland. That is something we have learned, and we also know how to make unproductive farmland very productive, to make it to build soil and build abundance in. And so as a result, we are now working with, in the last 2 years, we've helped five people from the urban, that have made money in the urban sector, who think the wheels are going to fall off. We've helped them purchase farm properties, a couple hundred acres here, 150 there, 250 here, acreages here within, 30 minutes of us that we manage. They don't live there yet, but they can buy it and hold it as a financial defensive posture. And we can manage it as an offensive financial posture and upgrade it. And they can feel comfortable knowing it's being managed and upgraded and taken care of, not raped and exploited. And there's a place there that if the wheels fall off and they can get there, we will have this very vibrant, stable community of people who know how to grow things, build things, and fix things proximate, so that we have a better chance of being hope and help when civilization becomes hopeless and helpless. Ultimately, we are trying to move we're not running from a position of fear. We are actually building from an embrace of faith that these systems are resilient, that they do provide stability. And if we can continue investing in this path, that whether things get better, whether they get worse, or whatever happens, we will have a better a better chance of riding out, whatever's coming down the pipe.
Over the years, Joel, how many, roughly, would you guess, how many young people have come and done internships or apprenticeships or whatever you call them on your property?
Yeah. So
Roughly.
we've had about 160 or so, fewer than 200 in the 28 years we've been doing this, and many of them have gone on to launch their own independent farms. Many of them on land they do not own. They hook up. So it's gotten so acute. Our daughter-in-law, actually, Sherry, started, oh goodness, 6 or 7 years ago, a global website, a matchmaking service. It's eagerfarmer.com, all one word, eager farmer, all lowercase. And this is a global matchmaking service for people who are looking for younger partners, and younger partners looking for someone, who either wants a partner or aging out or whatever. What happens, as you all know, is often, generally, the children inherit the farm property, but often the children don't want to farm it. They inherit it when they're 50. Mom and dad now died. The kids are 50. They left when they were in their 20s, but they don't want to lose it. They grew up here. They built dams in the creek here. They built forts in the trees here, and they don't want to lose it. And so there is a plethora of need right now, as either farmers age out or middle-aged children inherit. There's a plethora of need for young people, probably as big today as it was, in the original Little House on the Prairie days. Okay, the original opening of the West. There's probably as big an opportunity now for young people who know how. We had an apprentice who left here. He was from upstate New York, up in the Ithaca, Syracuse area. He went home and just let it be known that he was there and available. And within 30 days, 1 month, he had 3 landowners contact him that had a total of 1,000 acres of prime farmland in northern New York. That's good land, to come and manage their farms for free. Just do it for free. and then they would get land use tax. The problem is they got to get land use taxation for being agricultural. Well, you've got to be doing, you can't just let land sit and have it in agricultural use taxation. So I mean, we now, 3 of the properties that we lease for $1 a year, because the landowner saves thousands of dollars in taxes. They don't have to worry about it. And they know they have a safe place to get to, and it continues to get better and better every year. And so, you know, Alan Nation used to say, he used to tell me, if you know how to make a place beautiful and profitable, you will never lack for land. And I think he's exactly right. And so we have these young people leaving. Some of them are we've even had a couple of them start farming on like conservation easement land, like, you know, out in California where everything's either, you know, publicly owned or fallen into the ocean. And these guys have started, you know, operations. So one of the beauties of our infrastructure here at our farm is we've developed all this mobile infrastructure. So when it's mobile and modular, so you know, we have enough capacity right now to house 15,000 chickens, for example, but they're not in one big house. They're in 200 little field modules. And what that means is that you can get in on a shoestring without debt, and you can let retained earnings finance your expansion debt free with mobile infrastructure. So if your agreement or your arrangement goes south, you just load everything up on a trailer and move it. You carry your farm. So we're big believers that the farm is a completely separate business than land ownership. Land ownership is one business. Farming is a completely separate business. And when we can divorce those, it suddenly makes an opportunity for the landowner to more clearly, you know, see what's going on. And it makes an opportunity for the land manager to have autonomy and capacity to be an entrepreneur on that land base.
I love it.
That makes all the sense in the world. Now, looking at it from the other side of the equation, suppose you're a 16-year-old, 18-year-old kid, and you'd like to learn everything that you can about farming. Well, obviously that's a lifetime's work, but how could somebody apprentice themselves with you, and how long would it take him after being apprenticed with you, let's say, to be reasonably competent so he could go out and do this himself? Any guess?
It's absolutely a fair question, Doug. So almost 30 years ago, we began a formal apprenticeship program, and then that morphed into the apprenticeship and stewardship program. We don't call them interns. So what we have right now, our stewards are a 5-month program, May 1 to September 30. That we call that the Polyface Boot Camp, and we call them stewards. And that's all about discovering, is this a life for me? I mean, you know, a lot of kids spend a lot of money on college education, and then 10 years down the road, they're not even working in the place of their, you know, their degree. They're doing something else. And so we want people to be able to come, first of all, and find out, is this a vocation that I like? Without losing $30,000 in the process. And so it's a 5-month introductory boot camp. Then at the midpoint, if you want to stay for the 1-year apprenticeship, then you apply for that. And then out of that group, we take apprentices. And so the apprentices that we have for this year are the first level managers of the new group of stewards that are coming in May 1. You know, they say you don't actually learn something until you teach it. And so that is a confirmation for the apprentices to actually build their confidence level and to actually answer the questions, find out what questions they don't know, so they can accelerate their learning curve that second, you know, that kind of second turn of the wheel, if you will, that second season, and leave. And by the time they get through the apprenticeship, they are absolutely ready to take on the world. They can go anywhere. And I mean, obviously the good ones, and we generally only keep good ones. We've made a few mistakes. Okay, we're like anybody. We've made some mistakes, but by and large, by and large, if you've been here 17 months, the stewardship and then the apprenticeship, if you've been here 17 months, you are ready to go, take on the world. And
in other words, you're going to have a grip on what to do with pigs, cows, chickens,
yes,
grain crops, the whole thing. You'll have a grip on those things.
yeah. Now we are not crop farmers, so we don't grow corn and soybeans and things like that. But the overall principles of soil development, a carbon economy as opposed to a chemical fertilizer economy, an in situ carbon economy, how to, obviously our young people that leave, they wouldn't be necessarily ready to take on a vegetable operation. We grow vegetables for ourselves, but we don't do it for sale. We are actively right now looking for someone who will come. We've had this twice. One of the downsides of young people is they are transitory. They get married, they have babies. There are things going on. So we've had this twice in the past, where a young person comes and builds a horticultural enterprise on our land base. So we basically we have people who have built their own enterprises. Like one guy wanted to tap all the sugar maple trees. So that's one of his little, we want side hustles. We love side hustles. If you've got something that you think, we've had leather, people that make leather. We've got a cosmetics, that makes, natural, lip balm and hand cream and stuff. So, we want people to develop their own. We had one apprentice 2 years ago that wanted to stay. So what do you want to do? She said, I want to take Daniel's rabbits to the next level. Our son has raised rabbits since he was about 8. We're big believers in child entrepreneurism. There's a magic time between 8 and about 11, where a child is old enough to understand money, but not old enough to be peer dependent yet. And so we are big believers in child entrepreneurship. Anyway, he started with his rabbits when he was 8, and he's now 40. And Lydia said, I really love the rabbits. I want to take them to another level. And so that's her enterprise. She's taken those rabbits and she as her own. Basically, we get a royalty, just a royalty, a little percentage, but it's basically her outfit, and she has quadrupled that rabbit thing and making, thousands of dollars with this rabbit thing. So we want to allow people, if they see a complementary enterprise, we're not beginning to fill this thing up. Doug, right now, we have 25 salaries off the place, and we could easily have 100 salaries if we actually, filled it up with everything that's possible. We have a sawmill. So one guy is running the sawmill, and that's kind of his baby. And so what I think the main thing that these young, yes, they leave very capable of running livestock. That's our, pastured livestock. That's our specialty. But bigger than that, they leave with a can-do spirit that they're not victimized. They don't feel entitled for anything. They know they have to make their way, and nothing's going to be given. They have to go out there and slog it and get it. And I can't tell you how valuable that is. That in life is to come to life as a young person, realizing that that my success is me. It's not a grant. It's not a government agent. It's not, a law ruling. It's me. I've got to do it. And that can-do spirit just conveys with all of our young people.
Man, I love it. That's so fantastic. I think that, people should be paying, you should have a Joel Salatin University and be churning out kids by the thousands a year, and the world would be a better place, and those the kids would be better off for it than these silly educations are getting now.
Yeah.
In fact, you ought to have a podcast, Joel, don't you? Or not?
Yeah, I have a podcast with Dr. Sina McCullough called Beyond Labels, and it's quite comprehensive. It's obviously beyond food labels, but it's beyond just labels of don't pigeonhole me, don't pigeonhole you, don't pigeonhole issues. Just beyond labels, and people love labels. But labels become very limiting. We see the label, and oh, that's all there is to know.
Mm,
And so yeah, I do this podcast with Sina McCullough, and it's called Beyond Labels. Yes.
excellent.
Well, and you've written a lot of books, and we're going to list them, but nobody can read everything. What are your 2 or 3 kind of favorite books?
Sure. So if you're actually, if this discussion has stimulated man, I'd like to find out about that. The two are my early one, You Can Farm, the Entrepreneur's Guide to Start and Succeed in a Farming Enterprise. And then its sequel, which I wrote 20 years later, is Your Successful Farm Business. And that's everything we learned in the 20 years between the first one and the second one. So it's like farming 101 and farming 201. So those are the two for somebody that is, if this has really intrigued you, that would be a foundation. If you're interested in well, what's the overall philosophy of this thing, I call my soul book is The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer. That's my favorite one. Because when somebody says, "Oh, come on, farming's farming, cows are cows, pigs are pigs," no. Here's the difference. And so I call that kind of the philosophical underpinning book of what we do. The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer. And then if you're just interested in the topic, it's just a kind of piques your interest from a cultural, social issue standpoint, then the last one I'll mention is Folks, This Ain't Normal. Folks, This Ain't Normal. And that's the one I wrote for a broad cultural, what's wrong with us as a culture, from kids don't do chores anymore to government overreach in inspection, food safety regulations, to chemicals versus carbon. I mean, it's just very broad, written for for the broader culture to understand the basic issues. So those are the 4 that I've written 15, and those are the 4 that I would recommend, and kind of their niches. And thanks for asking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have just one more question for you, and it's a little bit, it has to do with the cancel culture stuff that exists today and everywhere. And I know you have been targeted for that, for these people before. And I just like to hear your thoughts on it all.
Well, I'm a big believer in John Stuart Mill's marketplace of ideas.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine anything that could be more damaging than to cut yourself off from ideas. When Peter Bain wrote the Urban Permaculture Handbook, the whole book is worth it for this one statement he made in there. He said, "In times of epochal change, the most important freedom to preserve is the freedom to share ideas."
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
think that is just profound. Listen, I don't care what side of the politics you're on or where you live. Everybody, don't you agree? We are in a time of epochal change. It's almost like we're approaching a kind of a darkened window, and we don't know what's on the other side. I mean, Doug, I'm a cult follower of your postings. And in fact, many times I print them off, take them out, and read them to our whole staff out in the, we have dinner. The whole 25 of us convene for supper. We have an on-farm chef, and we have these, communal every weekday, Monday through Friday during the summer, not during the winter, during the summer when the stewards are here. And we, all of us, aren't we? We're all struggling with with what's on the other side of this. I mean, my dad, again, my dad was an accountant and a libertarian. I grew up on foundation of economic education, fee and all that stuff. I grew up on that in school, and I've still got some of his books there behind me from back in the 1970s, rough, and the coming economic collapse and all this stuff. And these were all predicting that things were gonna, whatever, collapse in the 1980s, and of course, that didn't happen, and so we all believe that the balance sheet will be eventually balanced. I think we all believe. The big question is, well, when and what will it look like? And we just don't know. And just about the time you think it can't get worse, here I am in Virginia, and suddenly, we threw out all the Democrats and put in all Republicans. We're already not, nobody's got to wear a mask anymore. And I'm not, I'm a libertarian. I'm not a Republican or anything, but I call it the difference between the Publicans and the sinners. But anyway, the point is that things can change, and can it be arrested before the apocalypse, or do you have to have an apocalypse in order for, I don't know. It's an amazing thing, but this cancel. But I think we all agree we're in a time of real, epochal change. And if there's one thing we've got to preserve, it's the preservation of all ideas to come to the table. And so, for example, I believe that the social media, Facebook, Google, all them, that they should not be able to cancel anything. They got a free ride. They got a free ride from Congress, from liability as non-publishers. In exchange, they need to allow anything. I mean, anything. And yes, how to make a bomb. I mean, I don't care. Okay, anything. That's what you get in exchange for not being liable for content. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a carte blanche to be considered a public utility. Listen, if I call down to the utility company and say, hook me up with telephone service, they don't ask me what my politics are, what my skin color are, what my religion is. They just say, send us a check, we'll hook you up, right? And so these big social media companies Congress essentially carved out utility status for them. Yes, we are gonna agree. You're not liable. You're not publishers. You are a utility. And what's happened is that they have abused. They have on their own volition canceled things that they don't like. So you've got the war against Joe Rogan on Spotify and all that stuff. I've been on the Joe Rogan show twice. The guy's great.
I've seen you on it. Yeah.
I mean, he's just bringing what is wrong? What could possibly be wrong with a platform where everybody gets to speak? That's one reason I won't vote for Democrats and Republicans. They both say they want to be inclusive, but they all move heaven and hell to make sure the libertarians, socialists, greenies, and constitutionalists don't have a podium at their debates, on the local level, gubernatorial, presidential, whatever. And I'm saying, if the libertarians are that crazy, well, give them an audience so everybody can know how crazy they are. Exactly. If the greenies are that crazy, give them a podium so everybody can see how crazy they are. Let's let it come straight from the horse's mouth and really have some jockeying for ideas. So I'm an absolute open forum. The more open forum, the better. And this cancel thing, this you offend me, so I'm going to shut you down. It doesn't get us anywhere except the except a deprivation in our own lives of access to ideas. and that's probably a more hazardous substance than any
Yeah.
other substance, is the deprivation of ideas.
Well, how do you handle though when you're a target of it? Because I'm low profile. No one knows me. No one's after me. Doug has not really been targeted yet, but it's guaranteed to happen at some point. I mean, how do you even handle it when these things come your way?
Yeah, well, it's a real tension, so I have this tension. I mean, Doug is a bit of an iconoclast, and his business doesn't depend on a ubiquitous buyer platform, whereas I'm in the food business. Okay, I'm in the food business, which everybody's interested in, everybody buys, and in fact, because I'm in the green food, environmental food business. I mean, that's uh, that 60% of our customers are liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
Okay, and so here we are. I mean, in 10 days I'm flying out to California to speak at the California Libertarian Party convention, and then in April I'm going down to Louisiana to speak at the Louisiana Libertarian Party convention. I don't know what, suddenly the libertarians have discovered me, and I'm excited about it. It's a wonderful bridge, because I think the libertarians have been weak on ecological nurturing. I think the libertarians generally have been of a more, manipulative, dominated. If you can invent it, if you can do it, then do it. And I'm not there. So I bring a more whatever, gentle stewardship, nurturing message to, I think, the libertarian community. And I think libertarians would have a lot more social political equity, if they said, yes, ultimate freedom is abundance, and abundance comes from ecological stewardship. I mean, that's a natural thing. And actually, tyranny comes from scarcity, and scarcity comes from exploitation, a conquistador mentality. And so I think we libertarians could garner some political favors, if you will, by doing that. So our problem here in a retail business is that we have to be very careful how we present ourselves to the public, because more than half of our customers are, like I said, very liberal Democrats. It's like it's like the tension of our lives is that, the people we align with more, politically, conservative, they're all lined up down at Chick-fil-A getting factory chicken, and the people who we don't align with politically and socially and spiritually are all voting for abortion, teachers unions,
Right.
and the one thing they all seem to agree on is we all need to go bomb Russia now. And so that
Yeah.
there's another, there's another deal. So anyway, it is a tension. And what we have learned, I will tell you, what we have learned is that when somebody accuses us of being a racist or white supremacist or whatever, we do not engage them in debate. That's been our mistake from it. The mistakes that we have made have all been made as a result of thinking that these are reasonable people,
Right.
who you can have a civil discussion with. They are not. They are bent on vengeance and prejudice, and I mean, when we were going through our bloodbath, back 2 years ago, I mean, we were getting calls on the phone of, we're going to come and shoot your cows and burn your barns down. We had to call the sheriff to, start tapping the phone. And I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. And these people, they don't want to build a better world. They don't want to build something better. They've just got a fly in their ointment, a bee in their saddle. And worse than that, and all they want to do is destroy. They don't want to build anything. And so So anyway, that's where we are. And we've kind of punched through that bloodbath 2 years ago, and we're sailing well, and getting more and more interest in what we're doing. And as things become more dysfunctional in society, we just stay on course, stay on mission. Our mission is to develop economically, ecologically, and emotionally enhancing agricultural prototypes and facilitate their duplication throughout the world. That's our one sentence mission statement.
That's
And
a
as
good
long
one.
as long as we stay right on that course, then the ones who appreciate it will salute, and the ones who don't can't fight, because we won't fight them.
That's right. I love it. That's what I was thinking when I was studying that whole event. What I looked at, it just seems like it looked to me that the one mistake you made in the whole thing is you assumed
Yeah,
your attacker had good faith.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
and you're just such a good faith person. It's like, oh, it was so terrible. But anyway,
Not true.
karma comes around though, doesn't it?
Yes.
That whole situation,
Yeah.
it worked out.
Yeah. And you reap what you sow too. You do reap what you sow.
Yeah.
And that's a real truth. I mean, the guy that actually launched all those attacks is now no longer farming. His crew has accused him of mal and nonfeasance and worse, and animal abuse. And he's out of business, and I don't know where he is. He's gone, but he's disappeared. And so, yeah, I think you're right. You're exactly right. We can get distracted so easily. We want to defend ourselves. But these folks are not interested in a conversation. They're just not. So we just ignore them. We just ignore them and go on our way.
Smart. Doug, any last questions you have for Joel before we let him go? I know he's got to get back to those chickens you were slaughtering before he came in.
Well, what am I going to say? Joel, I don't know if you're aware of the fact that I sold out of the People's Republic of Aspen and have transplanted for the northern summer to the northern neck of Virginia on the Chesapeake Bay. So maybe this summer we can get together and have dinner and continue this conversation in person. I'd like that.
Oh, I would love for you to come out. My goodness, our team would just they would be all over you. We have people from around. Well, we used to have them from around the world. Now it's a little bit less, but because of our position in this movement, we have celebrity type people come through routinely. And when they do, we have supper. I ask them to, I call it sing for your supper, and I'll have them talk to the crew for 15 minutes, and you will not find a more bright-eyed, excited, enthusiastic group of young people in the world. Every CEO who comes here, they're here for about 10 minutes. They pull me aside and say, "Where do you get these people?" And we do only take about 10% of our applicants, so it is a tough thing to get in, but there are great young people. And I'll tell you what, Doug, to be my age, you're a little older than I am, but to be my age and surrounded by this youthful can-do enthusiasm, it brings me to tears. The average farmer, they're 60, 65 now, 70, and they're alone. Their kids are gone. They're trying to get it back on that tractor, that combine. They're in there. And it's lonely. And for me to be surrounded by this youthful enthusiasm and excitement every day, I can't tell you what it does for your outlook, your spirit. It's just fantastic.
Well, I'm going to plan my life around it. So
Good.
expect me to come up.
Good.
Or in my case, down to where you are.
Right.
It's fantastic, Joel. This has been absolutely spectacular talking to you. I really enjoyed it. And
yeah, we really
things like this.
Yeah, really, really sincerely appreciate having you, the legend, on the podcast. It means a lot to us. And I got this when I stopped by your farm in September of last year. So everybody go to polyfacefarms.com.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. Good for you. Yes, sir. That's wonderful. Thank you all. It has been an honor and a privilege. I've been looking forward to this. I do a lot of guest podcasts, and this one is special. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your insights, your wisdom in this space, and I follow you. I follow you just like a disciple. So let's get through this together, and kudos on everything that you're doing. Bless you.
Thank you, Joel.
Likewise.
You're the man.
Likewise.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.